Who's working for Google? Let's raise a request right now. You want to prove your critical role? Fix this.
It is very critical.
Pushpa Kumar, are you from Google? The way you enthusiastically turned on your camera.
And now watch everybody working for Google disappears.
Right, right. There's nobody work for Google in the 28 people who have joined. I find it so hard to believe.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason we have this problem, because none
Right.
of the
Nobody is from applying for Google. Did you see? I know how enthusiastic of a supporter you are of the current administration,
Oh
Dobrina.
yeah.
Did you see the round table of all the tech leaders with the president?
Oh. I did. I mean, I try not to, but I forced myself. Then I had to have like a couple glasses of wine right there.
Red or white is the main question.
Red.
Of course, it's red. White doesn't do shit. I'm kidding. Let me invite folks in. Swati, Subhan, Smita, Sanat, hi, Pushpa, hi, Prahlad, hi, Nuruddin, hi, Neeraj, hi, Nayak, hi, Nandini, Akram, Krishna, two Krishnas, Kirutika, Kavita, Jitain, Gausia, Gorang, Deep, David, Chandra, Bhagyashri, hello, Anjali, hi, Balikis,
Hi.
Anodhan, Anand, Ganesh, Balakrishnan, how are you? Anand Tegadkar, Akhila, Aditi, hi, oh my gosh.
Hey, long
How
time.
are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. So nice to see you guys after so
So
long.
nice to see you too. So nice to see you. I'm glad you could make it. Listen, I've been asking Dobrina, please do a session on letters of recommendation. I have sent her more messages than Dobrina cares to get in her inbox. So I was like, Dobrina, yes, please give a presentation. But also, I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but sometimes things will sound convincing in theory, but the moment you put it into practice, everything goes topsy-turvy. So I encourage Dobrina, can you please share what a good letter versus a bad letter looks in the EB1 domain? So Dobrina, despite being a newish mom, despite the current administration, despite a big workload, has been kind enough to come to the platform and share vital information about letters of recommendation. So thank you so much, Dobrina. If you don't know Dobrina, what are you doing? I'm going to share her link in the chat. Feel free to connect with her. But I have known Dobrina for, I think, 2 years now, Dobrina? Maybe 3.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
It
2
was I think it was a COVID relationship. That's what I call it.
Yeah. I got to know about Dobrina from a gentleman who I call as a really good acquaintance slash a great friend. His name is Shantanu Joshi. And Shantanu was the first person who told me about Dobrina. And the one thing he told me about Dobrina is how feisty Dobrina was when responding to his RFE because he had done such great work and he got an undeserving pushback from USCIS. So Dobrina was a great catalyst in getting Shantanu over the RFE hump and really defending his work in a way that stood up to the erratic test of EB1. I wouldn't call it strict, but erratic. So Dobrina, thank you so much for being here. Like I mentioned, from 12:06 right now to the next 20 to 25 minutes, Dobrina is going to present. If I were you, I would keep the pens and papers ready. And after that, after Dobrina has done presenting, then we'll open up the rest of the time till 1 p.m. to take your questions. So Dobrina, thank you so much again for being here. I don't see us because you're Googling, but we're very excited to hear you talk. Over to you, Dobrina.
Okay, thank you so much. And I think I lied to you a little bit yesterday when I said I don't have a presentation. Actually, I do. So it's like about 16 slides, but some of them are gonna go pretty fast. So don't get alarmed. I'm not gonna. I try make to make it not too boring. So just a little bit about what I do, how long I have been doing this. So I started doing EB1 before it was cool. So that was 2012. In 2012, I filed my first EB1 case. Things were slightly different, to say the least, back in 2012. And then things evolved. And as things evolved, different trends come out from the USCIS. So we kind of have to adjust. So what's relevant today wasn't relevant back then. What could be approved 5-10 years ago probably is not going to get approved today. So with all of the information I have here, especially about letters of recommendation, it's just a collection of sort of in the last, I want to say 15 years or 14, however, like and a half that I've been doing this, and just seeing things that, come out of USCIS, things that work, things that don't. And sometimes it just doesn't work with USCIS. So we just kind of keep pushing. Okay. So why the recommendation letters matter? So there are different schools of thoughts where some some attorneys say, well, I know some firms don't even have letters of recommendation. Some are kind of like, oh, maybe you need couple of recommendations, maybe you don't. I find the letter of recommendations it's pretty important, and here is why. So we are in a transactional practice of law, thank God, meaning you don't have to go to court. So how we gonna convince the officer that you're of extraordinary ability, you have critical role, whatever it is that you want to highlight. So imagine you're in a courtroom and you have a witness. The letter of recommendation is your witness. So when you're in a courtroom, obviously you want to have the best witness possible. You prep the attorney preps the witness, and that witness paints the best picture possible for you. Whatever it is that, maybe you committed a crime, maybe whatever it is that you're in a courtroom. Now, the same thing applies here, even though we are not in a courtroom. Thank God, we are, filing, we are following an administrative process. It's a transactional process. So that letter of recommendation is like your witness. These people that you're asking to either write the letter, sign the letter, however you're doing it, these are your witnesses. So you have to be very careful who are these witnesses. They can be some randos, they can be, for the most part, like your family and so forth, but I'll get into that a little bit more. It's just that I always tell, kind of put this out to make the point that how serious this letter of recommendation is and how important. Also, we use them because USCIS does not understand every field. Letters explain why the petitioner's work matter. Officers rely on expert testimony to assess the originality, the significance, and the impact of your work. So these are some of the reasons why we need those letters of recommendation. And also, and I'm gonna get into that a little bit more, but why they're different than your general letter of recommendation that you have for, maybe for your university, maybe for something else. So there are different types of letters of recommendation, at least, to me, they're different types. So the collaborators, I would want to say these are probably, maybe that's not even the best word possible, but they're collaborators. So these are usually your, managers, people that work directly with you. Now, when you're asking for letters of recommendation, don't ask your friends, don't ask your peers. It has to be at least your manager, VP, senior director, somebody who is above you, maybe one level above you. That's okay. So when people come and say, well, I cannot get a letter from the CEO. Well, that's okay. It doesn't have to be from the CEO. And here's why it doesn't have to be from the CEO, because most of the time the CEO has no idea, depending on the company, but most of the time the CEO has no idea what you're doing, right? Especially in big companies, like, let's pick on Google again. So, the CEO of Google has no idea what you do unless you directly report to the CEO. So sometimes it is better to get that letter from somebody who actually knows what you're doing. He or she knows your work, and usually that's your direct manager or their manager. So I call these people, collaborators, although, technically they're your, manager or the manager of your manager. Independent experts. So these are also very important, equally actually important, if not more important. These are people that don't know you personally, but they know of your work. One way or the other, right? So maybe they read your paper, maybe they thought, it was, it was a great paper. It added a lot to whatever it is that they were working on. They implemented your ideas, whatever the case might be. So these are people, how do they know you? That's the thing that you have to establish in that letter of recommendation. Again, did they read your paper? Did they saw you speaking at a conference? So I push, my clients a lot. I mean, some do it, some don't. That's your, what you want to do. But if you're going after speaking at conferences, that's one of the reasons you want to show up and speak there, because then you're gonna have people that they never worked with you, they don't know you personally, but they saw you at AI4 in August in Vegas, talking about whatever your topic was. That is a great person to do that independent letter. And then the other letters of recommendation, they're not actually letters of recommendation. So sometimes we would request things like confirming your judging. Sometimes clients come and say, well, I didn't get an email that I actually presented or judged whatever. So we'll get this confirmation. Maybe you mentored the company. Maybe you were an advisor, tech advisor to some startup. We will get, these are called letter. I mean, they're not letter of recommendation, more of letter like confirmation. And they're talking, sometimes, they'll have the, obviously, talking about, your impact to that company after you mentored them for like 5 months. But those are different. So I don't necessarily lump them with the letter of recommendation per se. And each letter, each type supports different criteria, right? So one thing to remember here is that we don't just get random letters, right? We don't just get letters. Sometimes I get clients, they say, oh, I have 20 letters of recommendation. I'm like, whoa, like what are these letters talking about? So usually letters of recommendation, the ones from your collaborators, managers, whatever, and independent experts, those will cover most of the time original contribution criteria and critical role. So these are the two heavy criteria that are backed up by those letters of recommendation. Unless that letter specifically covers some kind of original contribution that you want to present to USCIS, it might not be, it might not be a good letter. If you're just talking about generally about your work, and how, how nice of a person you are and all these kinds of things, that's not going to work. The other letters that confirm your activities, usually judging, mentoring, advisory roles. Sometimes, you've spoken at a conference, maybe we'll get a letter from, either the organizers or from somebody who can confirm your participation and your impact to the conference. Sometimes awards, we'll get a letter from the place that gave you the award and kind of explaining what is the criteria and all that. So don't go and ask a bunch of people for letters of recommendation. Those are very targeted and issue specific. So if I have an issue, if I have a trouble, like, giving to the USCIS evidence of your activity, I'll need a letter for that, one way or the other from somebody. So very targeted, and they cover each criteria. I mean, specific criteria, not each criteria. How different they are from regular letters. So regular letters, often they talk about your character, they personal praise, but no contributions. So those are not, USCIS does not care if you're hardworking, if you have a good character, if you volunteer at the homeless shelter. They don't care about these things. Usually, like when I see, like, sort of in the letters, like, oh, he has a nice personality and this and that, I'll just remove that because it's 100% irrelevant. The letters of recommendation for EB1 emphasize originality, the major significance, and the impact to the field with specific examples, and so actually quantifiable specific examples. And as I say, every center should do legal work. So these letters actually tell the officer answer how you satisfy each criteria and why you satisfy that criteria. Therefore, character references 100% irrelevant. Structure of a strong letter. Usually we start, and I mean, this is not, some attorneys have a little bit different, different structure, but this is kind of the generic sort of what you're gonna find, if you on Reddit, on ChatGPT, if you ChatGPT your letters. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, we start with the recommenders' qualifications and why they're credible. What do they do? How do they? And then the second part is how do they know you? Capacity, duration, direct or indirect. And then the third, fourth, fifth. I just lumped it into third paragraph, but that could be multiple and usually is. Then they talk about the originality, significance, and the quantifiable impact. And then we have a conclusion of sorts, which is usually like a couple sentences. So the majority of the information is in that third bullet point. That can be multiple paragraphs, usually is. So that's your generic sort of structure. That's the structure that I usually use for the letters of recommendation. Nothing earth-shattering here, pretty simple. As long as they know who the recommender is, why he or she is credible, how do they qualify, how do they know you, and then they describe whatever it is that they're gonna describe about your work, and then we have a conclusion. So this is it. What makes strong letters? Well, basically provides specific, not generic praise, right? So again, generic praise is something like, oh, nice character, easy to work with, hardworking. That's all great, irrelevant. You have to explain why and how your work is significant. You tie contributions to real world outcomes. So the outcome piece is usually the most important. So especially for original contribution and critical role. So sometimes I'll get all these letters talking about, what you've done, how you've done it, how great that was for the company or the field or whatever. But we don't have an outcome. We don't have a quantifiable outcome. So what happened? Okay, you did all these things, but what happened? So but what happened and how your work resulted, in what did your work resulted, it's always, well, not always, but most of the time it's missing. And it's missing when you rely 100% on ChatGPT or whoever out there to kind of, draft your letters. Nothing wrong with using ChatGPT to kind of structure the letter, to put in some kind of an outline, to give you ideas. But that outcome, you're the one that actually knows that outcome, or the person who is gonna sign the letter of recommendation. So very important, quantifiable outcome. And authored by a credible expert with standing in the field. As I said, usually you have to, they have to establish their expertise. So don't ask a letter from somebody who is 2 years into the, just graduated, their program, and then because you're best friends, then you ask them for letter of recommendation. That's not gonna work. What makes the letter weak? Generic praise without evidence, restating the CV instead of analyzing impact. So I'll get a lot of that. Basically, people will plug in their CV into ChatGPT and then ask ChatGPT to kind of do some kind of like a narrative based on the CV. So, and then they say, oh, this is my letter, like this is the draft. So that's not going to work too well. I mean, it's a good start. You can do that, but then you kind of have to add all the details that, you're the only one who actually knows those. Sometimes, the letters talk about the future potential. USS, it doesn't really care about future potential. A lot of things can happen in the future or not happen. So I don't think we should put emphasis on future potential. We should establish and demonstrate current significance. And then maybe, because of the current significance, maybe we have in the future a couple things that might happen. But that should be secondary, if at all. Sometimes, when the person is not ready for EB1 or NIW or O1 or whatever, the letters will talk about, oh, they're working on X, Y, and Z project. That project project, will have impact in the next 5 to 10 years. It will transform the internal system of whatever company and in the industry, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, but we have nothing current, right? So these future impacts, I would, as I said, I would put like secondary, just to kind of show that there is continuation of what you're doing, but that shouldn't be sort of the main theme of that letter. Overemphasis on collaboration without independence. So sometimes this bullet point in particular, it's usually, I see it with people that are, let's say they don't have that many years of experience, or they haven't been in the field for that long, or they just kind of graduated and they're trying to figure things out. So this is usually, that's where I see that. And unsupported conclusions, like, he's a leader, and then that's kind of our conclusion, but that doesn't tell us anything, right? So sometimes it's better, like, don't tell me that he's a leader, but show me how he's the leader, right? So by quantifiable impact and so forth. So these are kind of like, the things to avoid. So why, this might be kind of boring for some, but since being an attorney, that's kind of our job. So legal backdrop, why are letters important? Why do we kind of need them? Why do we have specific format? Why are we pushing? So one of the reasons, at least, why I do it is when your case gets denied. I mean, and this is what, this Churso versus Miller case is about. So case gets denied. Sometimes, you can appeal with the AAO. That's dead in the water. So sometimes if you have a good case and gets denied, the best option is to sue USCIS in federal court. And that's what Mr. Churso did. He had an excellent case. He sued USCIS, DHS, all of them in federal court. And what happened is actually the federal, and basically USCIS in their denial, they said all letters of recommendation, too generic, too general, didn't provide enough detail. So what the court actually said, they looked at the letters and they said, well, actually they were pretty articulate. And they actually provided a lot of detail about, his work, his critical role, his original contribution. And they actually approved. Ultimately, USCIS had to approve the case. The court remanded, and then USCIS had to approve the case. So where we use this as attorneys, so let's say I'm getting an RFE. And RFE talks about how your letters are general and they don't really specify things. Well, in fact, you had pretty good letters. They were with a lot of details explaining what you did, how you did it, the impact, and so forth. So I'll get back to USCIS and I'll say, well, in this case, similarly, the court actually said that letters that specify specifically articulate how the alien contributions are of major significance to the field add value. And then I'll quote that and push it back to USCIS and say, well, we actually have this letter. In our case is exactly like Mr. Churso. So please, obviously, don't ignore these letters. They are credible, and they provide sufficient detail. So basically, this is what the court in this case said. And the main thing here is the thing that I have at the you don't have to read this whole legal stuff, but it's basically court says USCIS has not adequately explained why these submissions do not provide evidence of contributions of major significance. So that's what the court said. So if USCIS just says, oh, these letters are, kind of generic, they're not, then we get back to them and say, well, first of all, they're not. And second of all, you didn't explain why they don't provide evidence of contribution of major significance. So when you have detailed letters of recommendation, and then we get an RFE, and even if we get a denial, and then you end up suing like Mr. Churso, then it's easier for the attorney to make the argument and go after USCIS and basically point out their deficiencies and how they're not reviewing the case the way they're supposed to be doing based on the policy manual and all these cases. So that's why, it is important to have detailed letters of recommendation, so you can actually go after USCIS if they, send an RFE or ultimately they deny your case. And I don't know why this is not, okay. So AAO, that's another, so when the case gets denied, some people tend to appeal the case at the AAO. I don't like appeals. They don't get you. I think the, the approval rate on those is about 6% or less. So if you have a good case, if you have a strong case, you might be better off in federal court than AAO. But anyway, sometimes, people file with the AAO. So some of these decisions, they're from 2024. Basically, they said that as the AAO reviews your case and kind of makes the argument why you don't qualify, basically they refer to the letters and they say letters did not explain how work was leading or critical. And then conclusions without evidence to support impact. So that was, basically whether that was the actual letter, I don't know, because we don't have access to that, but that's what AO decided. And then we have this other case, AO says praise petitioner, but no major significance shown. And then what is the lesson? The lesson is that generic letters weaken the petition. So that's kind of how, and these are some of the, this is actually right off the AO decision, the first one. And I don't have to read the whole thing, but basically it says here in the red, the kind of like the conclusion of this thing. The decision says that he provided little support of his conclusions in the letter, such as how the petitioner method had been introduced to a wider European audience, details related to the one-year study concluded about this, or evidence to support that his work led to injured among a handful of players, so reduced injured. So, they claim all these things, but they didn't really provide any explanation or evidence in the letter. So that was this case. And then in another AO decision, basically they said that the letter does not discuss how the petitioner work has been of major significance in the field of media and communication. And then another letter from the same case, they said, however, the letter does not discuss how the petitioner works have been of major significance, basically the same thing. Now, how good these letters were, I don't know. Obviously, we don't have access to that. But this is just to show you how the AAO kind of looks at the letters and, assuming that they're not, detailed enough, that's the language that they're going to use to kind of dismiss your letters, the case, and the whole thing. So practical tips, usually you aim for, 6 to 8 letters balanced between collaborators or independents, sometimes maybe a couple independents, maybe more it just depends on in your profile, in your case, and your work. Now, whether these 6 to 8 will include those like the confirmation letters that we get, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Sometimes those are in addition to these 6 to 8 letters. Ensure at least half tie work to major significance, quantifiable impact. So these are this is the most important, probably citations, adoption, patent standards. So the most important thing especially for original contribution, I don't agree with some of what USCIS comes out with, but that's what they want to see. We kind of try to play the game. You have to show me, original contribution to the field, right? So not to your employer, but it has to be to the field, basically showing how others have adopted, cited, or whatever used your work. And that's what that letter needs to say. Give specific examples of how others in the field, again, not your employer, have used or implemented your work. So these are, so review letters for compliance with structure and probability value. That, the probability value comes when, obviously, if you kind of generated the letter with ChatGPT and you sort of, plugged in a few things, well, do you have probability value there or not? That will, you kind of have to decide, how much, detail that you wanna add there, and how much you wanna rely on ChatGPT to do that for you. So here is a sample. This is a critical role, a letter for a critical role. So this is what not to do. that it's very important to know what not to do. So I'll read this through. The client is a highly skilled engineer with extensive experience in vehicle control systems. He has provided valuable input to his team and contributed to development of advanced technologies in the automotive industry. His recommendations have helped improve vehicle performance, and his work has been recognized within the field. He has also been involved in benchmarking studies and has made meaningful contributions to the success of various projects. Overall, his technical knowledge and collaborative efforts have supported advancements in motor vehicle design and performance. So this is just one paragraph of like three-page letter or 4-page letter. So good. I mean, okay, we know what the client does. We know he was helpful. Yeah, he has technical knowledge. He collaborated. His efforts helped the team. And yeah, pretty much that's it. I mean, that's what I get from this letter. But this doesn't really give me much, right? It's just a nice sort of, praise of the client, of his skills. It tells us, what he does and so forth. So something like this, that would be considered a weak letter of recommendation, right? It's not going to help me respond to your RFE if USCIS claims that your letters are just generic, because this is generic, right? It doesn't give me anything. Now compare that. I mean, it's the same, the same client, the same letter, the same everything to this. So this is the same idea, right? The same person, the same everything. So it is kind of long, but basically now we have specific examples here. So the letter starts, this paragraph starts with recognizing his expertise in this area. So the person who is writing this letter tells us that they recognize the company, him, whoever, they recognize the expertise. And they reached out to the client. Now the client becomes more exclusive, right? So the client showcases, yes, I'm an expert, and others within my company are reaching out to me. So I reached out to the client during a benchmarking process to gain a better understanding of the technical principles, design rationale, yada, yada, yada. As part of the benchmarking efforts, engineering teams instructed and tested the vehicle under various driving conditions to collect data and so forth. The client provided critical guidance in interrupting the data, explaining the rationale behind specific behaviors observed, and correlating them with the underlying control strategies he had developed. So here we actually kind of get to know what he did, right? And why that would be significant, we'll find out in the next couple paragraphs. He also suggested control logic enhancements to the benchmarking organization's own control. Then the benchmarking study that he contributed to led to enhancements in torque management and drivability control system, resulting in significant improvements in subsequent production vehicles. With the updated algorithms, tip and response performance saw large gains, with a substantial reduction in response delay. Furthermore, acceleration quality improved markedly, with the percentage of events meeting expected performance increasing from 76% to 97.5. Specific outcome, specific percentages, quantifiable, while had a transformative effect on vehicle drivability. These refinements contributed to recognition of the vehicles in industry evaluations, including, and then they give us, basically kind of like they receive some kind of awards or recognition in the industry because of the client's contribution to that benchmarking study technically. So this is where you want to be. Again, this is only one paragraph. It was a 3-4 page letter. But this kind of gives you the idea what the officer wants to see, or what the officer will ignore, and then will send us an RFE, and then we can fight back with actually saying, well, I mean, we actually provided the details that you were talking about that we didn't, right? And then, like sometimes in addition to that, I would say, especially if you're working for large companies and then you have like this kind of impact. Was there any media coverage about the work that has been done? Obviously this is talking about the the Chevy truck and whatnot. So if there's any media publications or anything like that, then we'll include that as well, just to show that actually your work is covered by major media. And this is for critical role. This is, and it could be, well, original contribution depends, but when it comes to media, this is for the critical role, not the media work. I mean, not for your PR criteria. So this is kind of like a sample of what a letter of recommendation for critical role needs to look like, at least the main text, right? The talking about your work. Closing, their letters are not optional fluff. They're actually critical legal evidence. Remember, witness. Those are, these people signing these letters talking about you. They're your witnesses. Weak letters can harm your case, as we saw in the AO decisions. They just say, oh yeah, I didn't provide any detail, like next. Strong specific probative letters can make the difference. And yes, you might get an RFE. We can push back on the RFE with these letters. Your case can get denied. And then depending on, whether going with AO or going with federal court, we can actually make a pretty good argument, since now we have decisions coming out from, federal courts, that how USCIS ignoring these letters is abuse of discretion. And sometimes approval or denial often hinges on the quality of recommendation letters. And I truly believe that, because if the officer doesn't understand what you do, and usually the letters of recommendation kind of tell them what you do, I mean, they're not going to sit down and Google what you do and how you do it. So that's why it is pretty critical to have decent letters of recommendation. And I think that's it.
Dobrina, I don't say this lightly, but that was one of the best webinars that I have attended. This is great. It was so actionable. You can stop sharing your screen so that you can see folks.
Yeah. Let me see. Stop presenting. Okay.
Right. I see people raising their hands, and we are going to get into
longer.
No, this is great. I mean, can you stay for another, like from 12:38, so like 12:40 to 1:10, if we can do it? Okay, perfect. I did a session with Karen Woolman, and she said that before even evaluating primary evidence, USCIS will look at the secondary evidence. And what I mean by that is, like, they will look at who has written the letter for you, because they're using those mental shortcuts to dig deeper and assess what it truly is. So, and that's what I think, like, in the books, how you have like these one-liner endorsements. I think letters are like that, where before reading the book, I'm like, who is endorsing this person? Let me look at how big of a deal they are. So it's really, really important for you to keep the focus where the focus needs to be. As always, I'm going to ask people to raise their hands, and please keep it to one question per person. If it helps, I am doing a 3-week workshop starting next week. I'm going to put the link in the chat if you want to join in that workshop series, where we take care of some of these foundational things so that you go to your lawyer prepared. You're welcome to join in. So the link is in the chat if you want to check it out. We're going to start with Deep or Dip, and then we're going to move on to Sachin and Khushbu. One question per person, folks. Deep, go for it. Sachin, go for it.
Hi. Thanks much for this session. Super helpful. So my question is, if you are, let's say, back few years L4 in your team, and your manager is L6, and there are senior ICs who are also L6, can the letter of recommendation be acceptable when it comes from a L6 IC, individual contributor?
So I'm not familiar with this hierarchy. I'm sure USCIS will not be familiar with that as well. So are they, at the time when you were in that role, were they your manager?
Yeah, my manager was L6 level, and so was the IC. So you can say staff engineer, equivalent of that level. So both are So I was interacting more with the L6 IC than with my manager because of the project, work and so on.
I would avoid getting a letter from somebody who is on the same level, right? So they don't want to. Generally speaking, you don't want to provide letters that are with people that are on your level. They want to see more of a managerial, and sometimes I've seen in RFE that depending obviously on the officer, they'll say, well, we want somebody, you should be sending us letters from a VP or whatever, somebody really high in the company. Now, if you really if that person has a lot to talk about your work, the impact of your work, the one that is on the same level, you can get a letter from them, but you have to have a letter from your manager. So the letter from your equal, I would say, it might confirm some things that you have done. And then the one from the manager, these two letters can be used kind of together. But I would say that, it has to be somebody above your level.
Got it. Just to clarify, I was L4, manager was L6, and the senior IC was L6.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, and with these levels, don't do this in the letter, because if I'm confused, the officer would be 100% confused. They don't know what L1 is, L5,
Right.
whatever. You
Correct.
have to explain what these things are, and maybe not even use these designations, because you might know your company, might know what that is. Nobody else knows. And you kind of lost me there too, to be honest.
Right.
Thank you.
A really good rule of thumb, which I have realized, is don't make the USCIS officer feel dumb. Nobody likes to feel dumb. And when we use acronyms like this, for example, Kripa Upadhyay says that when you say LLM, a lawyer is thinking a very different LLM than your large language model. So you want to be very, very careful when you're using these shortcuts and assumed knowledge. They don't make them feel dumb.
You can use them, but you have to make sure you define them at the beginning of your letter, what LLM is, and then you can use it as an acronym throughout the letter. But there has to be a definition at the beginning. Otherwise, for me, LLM is something completely different.
Very different. I'm going to give Deep, or I don't know how you pronounce your name. Deep or Dip?
It's Deep.
All right. Hi, Deep. Go for it. I know you got lost, maybe. So ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Aditya, and thanks, Dobrina, for the wonderful, informative session. So, Dobrina, my question is, if I am working for a company for, more than a decade, pretty much all of my accomplishments are in this company, and my manager, my current manager, who is actually longer in this company than I am, and he knows pretty much all of my accomplishments in the company, then is a single letter of recommendation from my manager covering my entire career in my organization is sufficient, or do I still need more than one recommendation letter from my company?
Okay, yeah, great question. So usually when you're claiming critical role from one employer, your current employer, I would say one letter of recommendation. Now, if throughout you've been there for 12 years, 15 years, let's say you change divisions, let's say, company got acquired, let's say you worked on one product and then you got, then you start working on something else, then it makes sense to have more than one, I would say. But the rule of thumb is you don't want to have 5 letters talking about the same thing. So if your manager can talk about everything that, for that critical role that you have accomplished, you don't need another letter from somebody else who'll talk about the same things. If there's new information that, other benefits that they can add, then do 2 letters. But, usually that's not the case for most people, unless, as I said, they started in one division, they switch projects, products, or something significantly different happened throughout their career within that same employer.
Okay, thank you so much. This helps.
Dobrina, what are your thoughts on folks thinking, or we falling to the trap of more recommendation letters meaning more credible, our case, like 10, 15, 20 recommendation letters?
I mean, I to be honest, like I've had people with like 20, 30 letters that, you know, they come in with those, and then we kind of like down that to like 8. The reason for that is, yeah, I mean, so people that have a little bit longer career, maybe they can have more letters of recommendation for them sometimes, but you don't need 20 letters of recommendation to showcase your extraordinary ability in the field. I mean, that's just not the case. Now, again, you know, you can have 6 to 8. Then in addition to that, if you have some of these that I call them confirmation letters about, you know, your other engagements, like, you know, that are not necessarily linked to your employer, that will add a few there, you know, like maybe for your membership activities, maybe for judging and all that. So maybe we'll end up at 10 total. But I don't see, like, you know, like having 20 letters of recommendation that will talk about different things, will, you know, actually have, strengthen the case. And not only that, but I just don't think the officer will read 20 letters of recommendation.
How long do you think an officer has to read our entire petition?
So I actually spoke with an officer, that was years back, so I don't know what they're doing right now. But a few years ago, the Texas Service Center had an open house for attorneys, and one of the officers that was attending that open house, he was doing actually the I-140 petitions for NIW and for EB1, and he told me 30 minutes. So he said, if I cannot determine what to do in 30 minutes, I'll send you an RFE. That's what he told me.
Something to keep in mind. Years of work for 30 minutes of evaluation. Don't we love it? All right.
So I don't see how 20 letters will kind of fit in that 30 minutes. Now, whether that's still the same, I mean, even if it's an hour, like some of these petitions, you know, they're like, you know, 10,000 pages. Even let's say it's an hour that they have to review a case and make a decision. I mean, that's still a lot of documents to go through. And some of these things are complicated. I mean, you know, some of these fields are complicated to understand, right, for the officer to make a decision. And yeah, that's what he told me. So he said 30 minutes. If I don't know what you do in 30 minutes, I'll send you an RFE. And basically request the same thing that you already sent.
Yep.
Oh, unfortunately, but you know, like if you think about the officers, it's not just your case. So they have quotas. I mean, you know, he has to review, let's say, I don't know, 200 cases a day or however many a day. If he doesn't do that, obviously he doesn't get his bonus or whatever.
Right.
So if you think about, if you put yourself in their shoes, I mean, you know, they have job to do. They have limited time. And, you know, if they read your case, they read it. If they understand it, they understand it. If they don't, they're going to go to the next one and you're going to get the RFE. That's just how the thing is. And especially, I think right now with all, you know, more cases, more EB1s being filed in the last few years, I think, you know, it's even probably worse in terms of timing or how many cases they have to process. And we saw that with Nebraska. I don't know if it's still happening, but I had issues with Nebraska Service Center over the Christmas time. Some of the cases that were filed premium processing, it took 2.5 months to go through that. So even though we paid for, well, they refund the money, but they couldn't finish it for premium processing for 2 weeks because it was just too many cases.
Yeah. So if anybody is curious how many letters, it's not the volume. Think about the USCIS officer just like you. Like, do you like reading endless pages of documentation? No. So the USCIS officer was also not willing to read that. So make their jobs as easy as possible for them to understand. All right. Khushbu, ask your question.
Thank you for the session. My question is about like the timings to get when to get the letter, and also it's sort of build up on this last discussion, like quality of the letter. Because, for example, I want to reach out to a collaborator on a project that I did about 5 years ago. And I know that he's a lead architect. He's much more senior to me. And even leveling wise, he was way more senior 5 years ago than me because I was a junior engineer back then. he can vouch for my work, and he has vouched as a recommendation for an internal promotion 4 years ago. But now when I want to get the letter again, and the focus is immigration and critical role and contribution on the project, so there is a specific verbiage that I am looking for. So when should I target to get that letter? Like, is it after an attorney consultation, or do people get those letters drafted by themselves and have them signed and then go to the attorney? The reason is I cannot do back and forth with a collaborator, a few years apart. Like, if I take it today and I go to an attorney a year from now, and then I learned that, okay, it doesn't have that and it doesn't have that, can you ask for that? Then I'm not sure if that collaborator is going to be that flexible. And I have seen people being apprehensive when writing letters for immigration. It's easier if it's for like in-house promotion or just professional portfolio, but you say immigration and people can be a bit apprehensive. So what's the best way to plan to get the letters?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of timing, the best, I mean, there's, at least for me, the best time is when you start actually working on your case with the attorney. So not consultation with the attorney where, you're going to book 1 hour consultation. They're going to go over your case and say, okay, you're ready, you're not ready, you're semi-ready, whatever. But when you actually start working on your case with that attorney, that's the best time to actually go, get that letter. Couple reasons. The attorney will either help you draft the letter. The attorney, if they don't draft the letter for you, some do, some don't, they will give you a template, they'll give you pointers. Then they'll have you draft the letter. It doesn't matter how bad or good your draft is, and then the attorney will take over and actually edit the letter for you. And you will go back and forth a few times with the attorney until that letter is finalized. And then when you go to your person, that letter is finalized for them to sign. Now, if that person wants to edit and whatever, then, obviously it's their signature, they can do that. But what you want to do is go to your recommender with already drafted a letter that the attorney has approved. What you can do now, before you start working with an attorney, you can reach out to these people. Let's say you have a list of whatever, and you can say, hey, I'm doing, in the future, in the next couple months, however long, do you mind like signing a letter of recommendation for me? So you just want to get them to kind of confirm whether they're going to do it or not. And then once you start working with the attorney, once you have the draft, the attorney will approve and will be happy with, then you can just send them the draft. Then you can go back and say, hey, it's me again. I reached out to you a few months ago. You said that you will help me with this letter of recommendation. Here is a proposed draft for you. Feel free to do your edits. And thank you very much, for your help and assistance. I think that's better than going back and forth with your collaborator on things that then later the attorney might not like.
Yep. This is also a really good time to say that, if you thought EB1 is all about publishing papers and IEEE, it's not. A lot of it is just soft skills. You cannot burn bridges with anybody. You have to maintain really good relationships with your boss, your boss's boss, because you never know who you will need to not just vouch for your work, but act as an expert testimonial of your work, a witness for your work. So yeah. Aditi.
Hey, thank you so much, Dobrina and Aditi. This is a great session. My question was around, I think you stressed a lot on the quantifiable outcome, right? To mention like a certain percentage or, how do you prove that? Do you have to prove that? That's my first question. And how do you do that? Because it might be a project that was maybe 5 years old. And then, to prove that might be tough. So I have a challenge there. How do I prove that?
Right. So a couple things. I mean, if it's an old project, maybe you don't want to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have to focus on something else. But in terms of how you prove it, so the way I have seen it, basically, like, with this letter of recommendation that I showed, so this gentleman did X, Y, and Z, and because of his work, the vehicle performance went up from 75% to 97, whatever it was, the number. And that's, because that's your witness, because that comes from the company, technically we don't have to, I never provided anything like to back this up, right? Because that's what that signature, that's what the recommender basically tells us. That's kind of our evidence. Well, is it better to actually have an actual document showing these things? Well, sure it is, but sometimes we cannot get it. But what's important for that letters is to have these numbers there, to have the percentages, to have like how your project, what you did, your methods, whatever it is, your product made the company, extra $10 million, or propel the company to the next big thing. They open a new division in the UK, whatever. I'm totally making things up. But there has to be some continuation of your project, not just saying, oh yeah, I worked on X, Y, and Z, it was a great project, and that's it.
Got it. That makes sense.
If it's something that, it's older, or there's not evidence, or, maybe it's not, it's not a good idea to give that to USCS, because they're going to come back and say, so what? Okay, you did that, but, like, we don't know the impact, right? So who did it impact? How did it impact it?
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, one of the, I've not read as many RFEs before as Dobrina has, obviously, but some of the RFEs that I've read, USCIS always says that while we do not have any doubts that you are competent in your job responsibilities, but we don't see the impact of it. Have you seen that language?
That's exact language. Like, so that impact thing, when I see the word impact, I'm like, I need a glass of wine right now. Because it's in every single RFE, and then obviously in some of the denials as well. So that impact, because you can do a lot of things, right? But if you don't show how your work has really, again, impacted the field, then it's not, USS has no idea.
Aditya.
Yeah, thanks, Dobrina. So what is the typical recommended length of a letter? I've heard people say between 2 to 8. With longer letters, A, folks can talk about more criteria, and B, talk about each criteria in more detail. And since lawyers end up backquoting the letters into the petition itself, the question is the adjudicator even reading the letter? And if they're not, why should not just go with a longer letter?
Right. So it is, there's not like ideal, I guess, length of letters. So I've had anywhere between 2 pages to 20 pages on a letter. I wasn't too happy with the 20 pages, but the client was really insisting on it. It was a good letter. It had provided a lot of evidence in that 20 pages. It wasn't fluff, so I let it slide. That was only once, though. I've never seen anything like that after that case. But generally speaking, 2 to 3 pages, that's the average. Sometimes if you, let's say you worked in this company for like 12 years, somebody asked that question initially. Maybe there's a lot of things to cover, right? Maybe there's a lot of projects you were involved with. Maybe there's a lot of things that you did for the company that were critical. So that letter might be longer. That letter might be 4 pages, might be 5 pages. What you don't want to do, though, so let's say with your manager talks about critical role in your company. Let's say you work for Google, picking on Google again, and they talk about your role, and they go on and on and on, and then there are different things that you have done, and it's all amazing, and that's about like 3 pages, 4 pages, and then they start talking about your papers at IEEE and your other memberships. And then, sometimes, I go back to the client and I ask, like, so do they really know about this? Like, your manager at Google knows about your IEEE papers and your, memberships at the Hackathon Raptors and other places? Well, no, but, like, they really, like, now when they read the letter, they'll learn about it. That's what you don't want to do, because that manager has no idea about any of these things, right? About your papers and all that. If they do, if they, they rate your papers, if they're aware, if your papers, obviously contributed to the Google's next thing, maybe they'll fix my presentation thing, then yeah, why? I mean, that should be included. So it's very important to keep that letter to what the person who will sign this letter knows about your work. However many pages that's gonna be, as long as it doesn't repeat, right? Because the last thing you want to just repeat like information. But I never like really on length, unless it's like fluff. I never really like limit it, because sometimes it's good information. It doesn't matter if it's gonna be on page 10 of that letter. If it's good information, I'll use it. And you're right. Usually, we do quote from these letters into the petition to prove a point. So if your manager wants to cover, critical role and something else, sure. But they have to be familiar. You shouldn't be feeding that information to them in that letter. I hope that answered your question.
Dobrina, this may not be a question that it's in people's minds, because they might be early into the journey, because I knew that this information, like this question would never occur to me when I was going through an EB1.
Mm-hmm.
But now it has occurred to me, given the conversations that I've had with lawyers. That is, when you say that a USCIS officer has 30 minutes,
mm-hmm.
cognitively heavy petition, just saying one thing in one part of the petition, the USCIS officer may not remember by the end of the 30th minute. So how do you maintain the balance between not repeating versus reminding the USCIS officer of this important data point?
So I don't, so the thing is, like, I don't repeat, I mean, in the recommendation letters, you don't want to repeat things, right? You don't want the same information appearing in the recommendation letter for your critical role. However, when I do the petition, I do a lot, I repeat a lot of things in the actual, attorney letter, right? So sometimes even clients will be like, well, this is repetitive. You repeat it like 3 times. And I'm like, believe me, you need it there.
Yeah.
So because the letter of recommendation, if you repeat like 3 times about the same project, that adds no value, right? And as I said, average letter of recommendation, you want to keep it 2 to 3 pages, unless, there's, those examples that I gave, for longer letters. We don't want to repeat things in the letter of recommendation, but I do repeat stuff in the petition, and I do multiple times actually on things. It just to kind of, especially if it's something important, I'll repeat multiple times and refer multiple times to it.
Yeah, I hope, when you are going to apply for your EB1 petition and your lawyers are making certain decisions that may not make intuitive sense to you, understand they're doing it from a place of experience. So, but I wish somebody told me this, because like lack of these understandings creates a huge level of distrust between lawyers and clients. So the more you know how they're thinking, the better it is for you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it's like, so speaking of lawyers, so some lawyers will not share the petition with the client, which blows my mind. But some won't, right? So the lawyer will collect your information, will collect everything, they'll do the petition, and you will not have the opportunity to read what the lawyer wrote on your behalf. I don't know how that's, why they do it. I kind of know why they do it, but I don't know how that works. I always share when I draft the petition, when it's still sometimes in rough draft, like I share with the clients and basically ask them for feedback, because I'm not them. I'm not the technical person. I don't do their work. My write-up is based on the evidence that I have collected and, some understanding of, basic understanding of their field. Now, when I share with the clients, basically they give me feedback. Oh, this actually doesn't make sense. This should be this should be that. I would take some of that, obviously. You are the one that does your work. It's not me. But sometimes, like I'll get like comments like, oh yeah, you repeated this 5 times. Yeah, I repeated it because it has to be repeated, right? So sometimes, when it comes to the legal sort of strategy and all that, leave it to the lawyer. Obviously with the rest, with the technical side of things, you can help actually the lawyer finalize that petition in a way that it does make sense. If the lawyer doesn't want to share it with you, I don't have advice on that.
I didn't see my petition. My lawyer never shared it with me. And one, yeah, because I went from a company lawyer, so I never saw it. And okay, I'll go to you, Praneeth. The lawyer is messaging me one night before my petition goes out, saying that I'm still working on your cover letter. So
that is possible, yeah, because sometimes sometimes you kind of you think that you're done, but then something pops up, or like, especially now, I don't know, I mean, I think more nowadays, because if there's something on the news or something that really affects your petition, I would put it in there.
Correct.
So
Praneeth.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Aditi. Thanks, Dobrina, for this session. So my question is, I work for a financial institute. It's a regulated industry, correct? So I often find hesitation with my managers, directors, and executives to put on the numbers in the letter, rather than they would be okay in talking about the impact in words. So I always push them to put numbers, but I really find so resistant. So how do I navigate these kind of situations?
What do you mean, members?
I mean, like my directors, managers, they're really resistant in putting the numbers, like impact in dollar amount.
The numbers.
Yeah, numbers. Yeah.
So, I mean, I usually with these situations, so it doesn't have to be the exact number. Maybe it's an average, right? Maybe, maybe it's an estimate, right? So they don't have to, in these cases, and obviously, the letter will have to say something along those lines. We're a financial institution, we're heavily regulated, we cannot provide exact numbers, but here are the averages, right? So they don't have to do the exact whatever number that they are trying to not to put on that petition or that letter.
Okay. One solution.
Praneeth, we have to go to the next question. Anjali.
Hi, Aditi. Hi, Dobrina. Thank you so much for doing this. It has been very helpful, given I am in the procedure of getting the letters done. Quick question: where do you establish the individual expert's expertise?
I usually do it in the first paragraph, so that when the officer reads it, they know who the person is and what they do. So that's kind of the first thing that I have in the letters.
So it wouldn't matter
that
if
was a
someone has
question, but this is Anjali's question as well. But will we get the slide decks, or would you prefer it just be in the recording?
No, you can have the slide. I can email it to you.
Because there was an outline of like where you're establishing your recommendation.
Yeah, there's nothing really secret.
Yeah, there's no gatekeeping here. Yeah, but Anjali, I hope that there's an outline in the Dobrina slide.
Yeah, and there's not, I mean, as I said, this is not something like, this is what I do. It doesn't mean that it's the best thing out there. It's just, I kind of like that flow because, you kind of have to tell them who you are first. And why you're writing, right? And then how they met you, and then the rest of the letter.
So it doesn't matter if the person writing the letter to you has like 300 patents, because then they're the expert.
Well, I mean, they can mention that they have 300 patents. So it doesn't, I mean, that's how they establish themselves as an expert. What you don't want to do now that, on that question, is have the expert's intro like one page. I've seen that too. And then about you, a paragraph. That's what you don't want to do, even if they have 5,000 patents, right? So you keep their expertise to one paragraph, and then the rest should be about you. Don't do like one page about them and then, one paragraph about you.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Jitain.
Hey, thank you, Aditi, for the session. Dobrina, this is great. Thank you for this session. My question is like, when you're trying to get a letter from someone who is a part of panel in a conference, so what that letter should have, because I talked to that, like I was there for 1 hour and he was there for 1 hour with me as part of the same panel. So what type of letter that should be, like what that letter should have, like his work is great or his presentation was great or he's expert in his area. Yeah.
So that depends on what you wanna prove with that letter. Are you going to establish original contribution of major significance? So usually with conferences, and I see that sometimes, people will plug it into original contribution that you spoke at like 5 conferences, whatever. And then if you get more experienced officer, he'll push back in an RFE and say, well, you spoke at that conferences, at all these conferences, but what was the impact? You just shared your knowledge and we don't really know what happened after the conference. How did your work get implemented? So I've seen this when it comes to conferences. So if you're gonna establish original contribution based on a conference, what you want to do is that person, whoever, either on a panel or an audience, somebody. I had a case where that was exactly the case. A person was speaking at a conference, and then they had somebody, not on the panel, but the audience, that actually took their methods and whatever it is that they had developed and implemented in their own organization that had nothing to do with my client's organization. And then they talked about how they implemented what the client shared and what was the result of that, and how they were more productive by whatever 90%, or I don't know, something like that. So again, you wanna know why do you want that letter? Like what is that letter gonna say? And what criteria that letter gonna add to, right? So not just random, like, yeah, I spoke with whatever conference. If it's a random sort of like letter and say, yes, I appeared here, that can go into like, final merits. I usually do like a whole final merits, like, 10 pages sometimes. And then we can just plug it in that letter, reference the letter, say, yeah, he spoke at this conference and this conference was about X, Y, and Z, and that, and we ended there. But if you want to prove a criteria or establish a criteria, then it has to match what that criteria requires, if that makes sense.
Dobrina, you were the representative, I think, Ketaki Vaidya. You were Ketaki's lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested, you can go to my YouTube channel and you can look up Ketaki Vaidya's talk. And in that talk, you will see her share a doodle of when she gave a talk, and somebody in the audience created a doodle of her insights that they gathered from her talk. And she mentioned in her talk that how she included that as evidence. And that is such a compelling piece of evidence because it's not solicited. That is organic. Somebody is actively taking notes. And I just wanted to know your thought process, Dobrina, when you included that evidence, which is just a doodle.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thought process that was going through your mind?
Well, because it shows expertise, and it shows the industry has recognized you as that expert. That's the biggest thing. That's the whole thing about EB1 is showing the industry has recognized you as that expert. Not your employer, not your friends, not your parents, but the industry, right? So, and when you have these things like the doodles, and sometimes I've included, I don't think it was her case, but just other cases, like people randomly reaching out to you on LinkedIn, not comments like commenting for better search, not stuff like that, but just like genuine, like you post an article or something, and then you have a bunch of like professionals, sometimes CEOs, sometimes other professionals engaging with you. And I've included these things too, because some of these comments will be like, oh, I liked your insights, can you do X, Y, and Z, can we collaborate, can you share more, can you do X, Y, and Z? Okay, that's not a criteria, right? But that's final merits, showing that the industry has recognized you as the expert. So usually that's my thought process on things like that. It might seem small. I mean, sometimes it's just like, oh, comments on LinkedIn, whatever, but they're not solicited. And they're actual comments, like people engaging with you. Again, it's not like I comment for better search type of thing.
Right. If you're curious, this is the one that I'm referring to. So that's Ketaki. She's giving a talk. It's on my YouTube channel, and this is an evidence that was submitted in her EB1 profile, not a 10-page, letter not Globee Award saying that you have given, like, whatever, Innovator of the Year award. Oh my goodness. But these are the things that are needle movers because it's unsolicited, it's organic. It shows that people have taken notice of you, and it adds up. It's 1:15. And Dobrina has to go, else she's going to pop open a bottle of wine on the call.
For that, it's 12:15 here. So
okay, great. We're gonna take Lakshman's question, the last one, folks. Others, you have Dobrina's LinkedIn. You can definitely go reach out to her. But Lakshman, you're the last question. Make it a good one.
Thanks, Aditi, for the last question. I think it sounded like the 8 letters is the sweet spot. So if I were to split the number of letters among my current employer, I'm working for 4 years, versus the past employers, plus the conferences, the people I met, plus my scholarly articles, like people might like and reach out to me. So all of this, how do I split? What is the sweet spot to divide current employer, prior employer, and outside of that?
So unfortunately, I don't have a formula, right? I don't do numbers. I don't do math. That's why, I sit here today. But so it's different for everybody, right? So in terms of critical role, let's say, if you're claiming 2 employers for your critical role, that will be 2 letters, unless you worked for one that, as I mentioned, for 10 years, and then you switch divisions, you switch this and that, then maybe a second one, might help. But generally speaking, it's 1 letter per employer, per critical role. So that will, if it's 2, then that's 2 letters. If it's 3, that will be 3 critical roles. Sometimes it's 1 because maybe the person wasn't maybe they worked before, but it wasn't a critical role, right? So you don't want a letter when you were like entry-level software developer. That's not going to be a critical role. So so that's kind of the number for critical role. It depends on what you're going to claim. If you're doing original contribution, what type of original contribution are you going to claim? Is it going to be patents? So that will be probably 1 letter from somebody who is using or utilizing your patents. If it's multiple people, maybe that will be 2 letters. Are you going to, for example, the conference example, did you speak and then somebody implemented what you had to say in their organ? That will be another letter. Did somebody like your paper and then they use it as training manual for their employees? That will be a 3rd or 4th letter. So the number of letters is driven by how many things you want to show and prove to USCIS. Then we have the others, like, okay, you told me, okay, I'm sitting on this board, whatever, for AI, a nonprofit organization, and I look over their tech policies. I give them advice on X, Y, and Z. Well, I want a letter from that board, from that organization, talking about what you do for them. Is that going to be a letter of recommendation? Well, perhaps, but that will be a great final merit, evidence. So I don't want to put an exact number of how many. When I say 6 to 8, that's usually looking at all the cases that I have done, that's kind of like an average. Some had more, and I've had a couple of cases that had about 5 letters. But they went okay. It was few years back, so that could work. So you really want to think about, so none of these letters are random, right? So each letter has a purpose, and then depending on what you want to prove and show to USCIS, then you gather the rest, if that makes sense. I know people like numbers, but I hate numbers, so I don't do numbers.
Awesome.
Thank you.
It's 1:20. Dobrina, for people who are still here, can I see a show of hands? How many people are still awake? How many people are still awake? Okay, awake. Okay, great. Any last words of advice that only people who get this advice because they stay till the end of the call? What advice would that be?
I would say don't rush it. Don't rush your petition. I see a lot of people trying to, because they have priority dates, they try to rush things. They try to sort of publish things that are not in reputable places, and then they get pushed back and so forth. So that's one. 2, try not to have too manufactured profile. And what do I mean by manufactured? Glowy words, stevia words, basically just the regular things that everybody does. That's not gonna get you necessarily the case. Try to be creative, try to be different, explore different opportunities. And the other thing is sometimes, and I get this question a lot, especially from people who are about to start their EB1 journey. They heard about EB1 yesterday, and then they want to know more about it. When I talk to them about all the activities that they need to do, they're like, okay, so how do I start? How do I even know where these things are, right? So you've been working for Google for 10 years. That's the only thing you know. You don't know what's going on in the field. So I always tell people, look, your first thing is go on LinkedIn. And don't look at the EB1 people that got their EB1 and all that, but look at others in the field, the leaders in your field. I call them mouthpieces that are posting on about your field, and see what they do, see what conferences they go to, where they get involved, where they get engaged, and start doing the same thing, right? So this will save you some time, initially, to kind of have a plan where things are in your industry. And then you can start Googling and see where you can plug yourself in. But usually that's kind of where I tell people to start looking and finding, like, let's say you're looking for the top 10, AI conferences. Well, look at where people go, look at where people speak. I mean, people in your industry, and then start from there.
Correct. And you can always use AI for this. It is just one search away. Like, and I work in this field, who are the top contenders? Go to their LinkedIn, look at the associations they are involved in, and just copy. There is nothing as original. It's just somebody remixing stuff. So thank you so much, Dobrina. I'm going to wait for the PowerPoint. So I'm going to send people the recording. I'm going to send people the PowerPoint. And for folks who made time to invest in your own growth, congratulations to you. Keep showing up. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to get your EB1. Good luck.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.